Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Speedcast. This is episode 11. I'm here with Juan Castro. Hey, Juan.
Hey everyone, Juan Castro here.
Today, we're going to talk about market changes and market conditions. And something really cool happened between me and Juan last week. We have our first deal together. So we want to start with talking about that and how that played out. I had buyers that I met in October. We actually toured October 5th in the community that me and Juan are now under contract with. And they went back home to Texas. They listed their home and they did not receive an acceptable offer on their home or any offer actually till April 22nd. They went under contract. And that was back from October. When they called me on that day, some of the homes that I toured with them back in October in that same community were still on the market. Some of them they liked, but there was a newer home on the market and it happened to be Juan's.
And that one is a beautiful home, which my seller had on the market for about 2 months, if I remember correctly. So, a good point about her home is we knew what the community was doing. We knew that it takes a little bit of time. It is a 55 and up community,
And those
which,
always take longer, right? 55
yeah,
and up, we're wiping out some of the population that can't even look there.
yeah, yeah, the buyer pool is a little smaller. Most people in that category, not all, but most people in that category are not racing to get
Right,
into a house, unless they have their house under contract, of course. But most of them are not in a race per se.
right.
Um, so we knew what
Well,
the
my buyers
comparables were
were a
doing.
slow burn, but then they had to
Yeah,
race because now their home was under contract. So now,
yeah,
oh, we got
yeah.
to do this.
So they wanted to buy the whole time, but they had to hold off.
Yeah, they knew exactly what community they wanted to buy in. They loved the community. Everything's
Yes.
fabulous there. So we knew exactly where we were going. It was just waiting. And the
Yeah, yeah,
market is big now. That's what we're going to talk about, right? Market changes.
yeah. Yeah, the market was flat for quite some time, but I almost feel like I'm starting to see a little bit of a decline. I
I,
mean,
I think the past few weeks, which
yeah,
typically we get into this time of year, we're seeing we're seeing everything speed up a little bit, and I'm
yes.
seeing it slow down instead.
Yeah, yeah, I think we were thinking summer would pull us through, but those two bumps that we normally get here in
Yeah,
Central Florida, they pretty much blew out during COVID for the most part, but they were still a little bit there.
right, right.
But we're not really feeling it so much now, probably because of all the noise going on with interest rates and the economy in general. So some people are, it's interesting that the data came out that the traffic on the portals was up over 30%. And this was like a month ago.
Right.
And people were saying, oh, the traffic is up, sales are going to be up. My thought process was the traffic is up because everyone wants to look,
They're
but
waiting
no one is ready to pull the trigger
now.
unless they feel it's almost like a deal of the decade, like
Yeah,
it's
that's what they're
unicorn
looking for. They're
property.
looking for the deal of the decade. And
Yeah,
everybody, I think both sides need to get more realistic, right?
yes,
On both ends. So
yes,
buyers are like, well, I'm going to offer $100,000 less. Well, that's not really the market we're in.
no,
Things are
no,
not slower because things are slower because of interest rates and stuff, but the value of the property is staying pretty consistent, coming
pretty
down
close.
slightly. Some homes are going up in value still. So it's pretty steady. So the value is still there. It's just the waiting game. So sellers are not going to just take $100,000 under
No.
asking price, but some sellers also think we're going to get multiple offers or that it's still 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the important thing from today forward people should look at is if you determine that a house is worth comparable range,
Mhm.
400,000,
Right.
and it may appraise for 400,000, is the buyer willing to pay 400,000?
Right.
They may be willing to pay 385, 390, or they may be willing to pay 400 and ask for 10 or 12,000 toward closing costs or prepaids to do a buy down of their rate or keep some money in the bank and keep it from, coming out.
And to me, that
So,
makes more sense right?
Yes.
Logically.
Roll it in, roll it in.
Yeah, like roll that in, less cash out of pocket for you. Hold on to that cash. You have that to do what you have to do to the house or whatever. If you want to do stuff
Yes.
up by
Or
new,
pay off a car.
pay off a car,
Pay
whatever,
off a car.
at lower
Yeah.
rate and or just, no closing costs, no out of pocket.
Yeah. I mean, imagine in your mind, $10,000 is about $70 a month.
Yeah,
So if you get a credit of $10,000 from the seller and you finance 400,000 and you save $10,000 in your bank account, you could pay off two credit cards, which probably cost you anywhere between $250 and $350 a month.
exactly. So it just makes financial sense to do
It's
it.
just math.
So some people though want to come in as still at that 380 and ask for $10,000 in closing costs. That's
Yeah.
the unrealistic expectations are there. And they're like, well, it's been on the market for 60 days, but the home value is still there.
And 60 days is normal now, guys.
It's normal.
So
That's the difference, right? So
so
60
45 to 65 days. If
I
you got to look
remember
at the
when
metric.
I first started and the market was crazy, right? And I had some FHA buyers, so they really couldn't compete. So we were setting the search to, don't laugh, if it was on Redfin 14 days or longer, we could
Yeah,
probably get that house. 14 days now is nothing, but
yeah,
14 days 3 years ago was like a stale listing. Like, why is it still sitting there?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
So I mean, I think the key is that buyers got to understand the seller is probably going to become realistic and be amicable. However, their cost to hold the house is still probably less than the buyer's cost to acquire the house.
that's it, right? So they're, even if they didn't buy the house when rates were low, they refinanced. So these sellers are sitting on under 3% interest rate.
Yeah, three, maybe four. I think I had one
And
recent
they can
seller
maybe
who was
rent
at
it
four and a
out
half.
instead and hold on to it, right? Because that their mortgage is so much less than the new buyer coming in, even if it's the same.
Yeah, yeah. So they can be a little bit picky, but the market is teaching them that they can't be super particular, but they're not going to let the house get stolen.
Right, right. And that's where I think that's where the disconnect is between our buyers and sellers.
Yeah,
Our
yeah,
job is to connect the buyer and seller, right? Come to some kind of mutual,
yeah. And I think that's where the agent becomes the magnet for the transaction.
right,
Because if you present an offer that is below comparable range and it's not presented in a professional way, it lacks all the documents, the
right,
pre-approval's not there, there's errors all over the contract, so there's housekeeping problems. So you're going 2 or 3 days back and forth just to clean up a contract to present it to the seller.
right.
The
Yeah.
sellers has a fear that this is not going to work.
It's not gonna work, right? If there's already mistakes now, like what's gonna happen? Did I send you a clean
Yeah.
contract? Wow.
Yeah, I presented an offer this morning to one of my sellers. The offer was very low, it was 50,000 low. They
Okay.
asked for 3% in closing cost.
Wow.
So really it's like 65,000 low.
Yeah.
The contract had a bunch of spelling errors. Check boxes were not checked. Addendums that weren't needed were added. The ones that we need were not there.
Yeah.
It was marked as cash, but they're doing a hard money loan based on a refinance of a house that they have.
So it's not cash.
So it's really not, I mean, there's no contingency for that, but
Right.
we know there could be a bomb exploding in 15 days because there's a 15-day inspection period.
Right.
So first thing my seller says is, have you ever heard of this person? I said, no. I look them up in Redfin. They've sold one house in 2 years. So, experience does matter, guys, when you're
Yeah.
trying to do
I
these
got an offer
presentations.
last night on a house and the contract was clean. Everything looked good, right? Like no errors or anything. I'm like, great. But we talked about this. The seller didn't, the buyer's agent did not ask for compensation. Okay. He did call me yesterday though, before the offer to say, what is your seller offering? I said, it's negotiable. Just edit into your offer.
Yeah.
I got the offer. Nothing was edited in. I pass it on to the seller. I think they're accepting it and he's not going to get paid. So I don't know what's going to happen.
And that's the thing. So the rules changed for us guys, where now we request compensation as part of the offer package. So if an agent doesn't check the box and put in the formal request for compensation, whether it be from the listing brokerage or from the seller to the buyer's broker, and we execute all of the documents, the seller is not bound to consider that after the fact.
Right. Now, the thing is,
And
we have that inspection period, so can they walk during that? Because
the buyer could, but the buyer is
buyer
not
can,
part of the compensation, right?
right, but if the buyer has an agreement with the buyer's agent to pay 2%,
They could be bound to pay the buyer's agent.
when they realize that their agent messed up.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, but that's the difference is that Nancy can teach to the seller what might happen,
Right.
and the preparation is there. Whereas a lack of experience says you put your head in the sand and hope nothing happens, but something is going to happen.
Something is going to happen. I know that. But it's not my job to say, hey, do you want to get paid? Right.
Exactly. We're
I
we're
represent
not
the
the
seller, so
police.
I have to do what's right for my seller. And I'm thinking, we're not paying compensation. Great. Awesome. You'll get more.
Yeah, yeah,
I do have a feeling that, obviously something's going to happen,
yeah. So,
but
and I think the big takeaway is that if you want to sell,
if you
you
want to
have to
know
have
what,
you have to list to sell.
yes. Yeah.
You don't list to list. You
Right.
list to sell, and it doesn't mean you're selling at a low price to the lowest person. It means that you look where the comparables are, and you imagine in your mind the comparables are right here. My price might need to be an inch or a hair below that
Right. Where
because
the
the
market's
curve is not
going.
this way, the
Yeah.
curve is this way. So let's get in front of it and let's sweep all the competition off the table and get all those buyers, which are probably three,
Right.
to look at your house instead of considering the other one that's going to probably do a reduction in 21 to 30 days.
Right. Exactly.
Stay in front of those reductions. Don't change your price because everyone else changed their price. Then you're chasing the market.
Right. But some sellers are just throwing it on the market. Like if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So they're keeping their price high. They're like, I don't really need to sell. But there's other sellers, they need to sell to move on to their next house. They're getting
Yeah.
transferred. They can't buy a house in, I don't know, wherever they're going, Arizona, right? That's where their job is transferring them unless they sell this house. So they have to be more realistic.
Yeah.
They're
And
not going to get to their goal.
I think that's where we come in.
Right,
So in my mind, you're going to sell for what the market bears no matter what.
right, right.
That's just the way it works.
Mhm.
So why would you sell with a full service broker who overcharges their fee based on dinosaur history? Or why would you sell with a full service broker like Redfin that is highly efficient in our process and our product offering? And we basically charge about half the fee.
Right, right.
So
For
if
a
you're
better
gonna,
result. Yeah, we can't
yeah,
achieve the same
if
result.
yeah,
We're going to charge you
it-
less for a better result.
yeah,
Hopefully.
and if it's all about trying to leverage the property on the sale, you don't just make money on the top, you also save some money in the back.
Right.
So allow us to do that process for you,
Mhm.
and you're going to end up being a winner.
Right. And I don't think it's the market now, like I mentioned, like people are like, well, let's just list it at this price. We're going to try it. It's not the market for that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
not, we,
yeah. You're better off holding off or changing your
right. You don't really,
strategy.
you don't need to sell it. You just want to try it. It's not the market. Like we're not just
Yeah,
blowing out
I
multiple
think
offers.
I think the key is that our job is to counsel sellers and buyers
Yeah.
before they dip their feet into the water. It's
Right.
always good for them to look online and get a feel for what they believe is happening. We
Yeah.
reconcile it against data to confirm what they believe is true,
Hmm.
and then we determine the path to get them success.
Right. I had an interesting one the other day. So buyers sent a CMA. They don't agree with the CMA because they pulled up tax records, county tax records, and in the same neighborhood, homes were selling as low as $210 a square foot, but the home that they're looking at is about 235 a square foot. Actually listed at 240. My comps come in at 235. Send me those addresses. I looked them up. The community with all different types of homes. So the ones that are selling at 210 are townhomes.
Yeah, they're not the
Ones that are
same.
selling at 236 are the homes you're looking at. So we have to compare Apples to apples.
Apples to apples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a townhome most likely is going in the same community, is probably going to be less per square foot. It's also going to have a higher HOA
Yes.
in the same community.
Absolutely, yes. And then what people don't remember is that in Florida, the appraiser doesn't use dollar per square foot to determine value. They do adjustments.
Yeah.
And they get the dollar per square foot as a result, a final result of the adjustments.
Mm,
So when people say, well, these three homes, this one sold for 240 a foot, this one sold for 210 a foot, this one sold for 225 a foot, our average should be 225. That's not true.
no, no. And two exact homes could be very different.
They
Exact
could
model
be.
homes right next door to each other. Example, yours that we're under contract, that home has a ton of upgrades. We can have the same model that does not.
Yeah.
Now they're
Yeah.
not going to be the same price per square foot.
No, no, the appraiser will do adjustments. Some things are better than others, of course.
Right, of course.
We're trained to try to determine those as well. We're not
Yeah.
perfect, but we're pretty close most of the time.
Right.
And the appraisal is art, not science, right? One appraiser comes in at 240, another
Right.
one comes in at 230, another one comes in at 250.
Yeah.
So the job of the
Sometimes it's not a
appraiser,
bad day. They're not in the mood to do this. I
yeah,
don't know. But
yeah, I tell people all the time since 2008, the job of the appraiser has been to support and defend the contract price.
right.
It's not what is the house worth.
Right, exactly. Right. Because they sometimes they stop, like our contract
They
is
stop.
300,000. They get to that purchase price, they
It's
stop
over.
raising, it's over, it's done. That doesn't mean the home might not be worth more, but we
They don't need to defend more.
they don't they, you know, we're his job is to make sure we get financing or if he can support the purchase price, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes it's an odd number, like it's a $200,000 value for a contract, and the house comes in at 203. That's because his last calculation rounded off at 203.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean it's worth 203.
Right, right.
So they kind of got rid of that. Now in 2008, you had a contract for 200. The appraisal came in at 210. The first thing the buyer did was, can we raise the price to 210 and get 10,000 in closing costs back? And
Yeah,
then they were doing a 90-10 mortgage. So now they're doing 106, 107% financing. They're buying a house with like $1.
yeah. And
But
what
we know what
happened after
happened to a
that,
lot of
right?
those.
Yeah. Do we even need to say what happened after all that mess?
Yeah. So the banks don't want that to happen again. They've changed some of the rules and the Fed has changed some of the rules. But I think the important part is just know what your market's doing.
Yeah. And every area is a little bit different, but
Mhm.
overall, I think it's a slowdown in most places as far
It
as
is. Yeah.
market and
I think you're right. I
so
think you're right.
I think this is a good topic to help people
Yeah.
in this market and we'll catch up with them again next week, right?
Yeah. You
Nothing
guys, if
to
you have any
add before we
questions,
sign off here today?
well, if you have any questions, reach out to Nancy or I. We'd be honored to give you some answers.
Yeah. And we can connect them anywhere in the country, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
there's a
we can
website?
connect you with anyone like us.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be here in Florida, but if it is, we'd love to help you. And that's it. We'll catch up again next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.